Nintendo console out on the market, Nintendo's biggest franchises would soon make their big 3D debut. Except Metroid, that shit got shafted on the N64. Well, for our concern today, Kirby would eventually see a game released on the 64-bit machine, albeit very late into the system's lifespan. Kirby 64 initially started life as a game for the N64's disk drive add-on, and after the developers realized, by god, this thing ain't ever releasing, it was reworked to be a regular cartridge game. Not only that, but Kirby 64 started life as a proper 3D game, but eventually the decision was made to make it a 2.5D game, where you're still locked into side-scrolling movement, but the path has you go in and out of the foreground and background. On March 24th, 2000, Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards would land on the N64 and would be the final brand new Kirby game directed by Shinichi Shimomura, as after this, and directing Nightmare in Dreamland, he would leave HAL Labs and the game industry entirely, and it's honestly kind of a shame because I know I might be jumping the gun saying this, but I think Kirby 64 is his best work. Kirby 64 is remembered pretty fondly by those who have played it, and it's understandable why. Truth be told, I didn't think much of this game prior to playing it for this video, but afterwards I was like, oh my god, I get it now. Not only is Kirby 64 very fun, but it's also a lot more difficult than your average Kirby game. I mean, the game is still easy. This is a Kirby game after all, but seriously, this is a step up in difficulty from the Dreamland trilogy, Adventure, and Superstar. While I have played Kirby 64 before, this is my first time actually playing the game to completion, and given how Dreamland 2 and 3 were, I was interested to see how 64 developed and evolved those games' concepts. So let's not waste any more time and see if Kirby 64 truly is a hidden gem of the Kirby series. We begin on the far-off planet of Ripple Star, populated by these fairies who guard this large crystal. All is peaceful until one day dark matter shows up and envelops the planet, with the Fairy Queen tasking Ribbon to take the crystal away from dark matter, and after an intense chase, dark matter shatters the crystal across the cosmos, with Ribbon crash landing on Popstar. It's here we see Kirby stargazing when one of the shards strikes him in the head. Ribbon asks Kirby for his aid, to which of course he agrees, as this means another reason to genocide Popstar. Kirby and Ribbon set out to recover the crystal shards and defeat dark matter once and for all. A little more involved than the average Kirby game, but that's the gist of the story, which sets up the main gameplay mechanic of recovering the crystal shards by traversing through various levels and worlds in the game. So this being an N64 title means we have 3D graphics. However, as I stated before, Kirby 64 is a 2.5D platformer that actually makes use of its 3D environments, as Kirby will move through the background and foreground on the path, with the camera shifting as you move through the level. There are a lot of 2.5D games that are just 2D games with 3D models, like the new Super Mario Bros. Series, for example, and fortunately, Kirby 64 is nothing like that game. I genuinely appreciate that this game takes advantage of the 3D space while still being 2D in movement, although a bizarre consequence of that is that this is one of the very few N64 games to use the D-pad. Yeah, you use the D-pad to move Kirby and not the analog stick, and I'm fine with this, especially in 2D games. Control-wise, Kirby functions like he did back in Dreamland 3. He can dash, slide, and the copy abilities function like they did in that game, with one attack per ability, so if you're a fan of how Superstar did things, well, fuck you then. Something odd though is that Kirby can't fly forever in this game, as after spending enough time, Kirby will begin to struggle and then just give up and deflate, which can make platforming more challenging as opposed to the previous titles. As you might have come to expect with the Dark Matter trilogy of games, your selection of copy abilities is rather limited. Everything from Dreamland 3 returns except for Parasol and Clean, but Bomb was added as a replacement, which I like way more than those two abilities, but that still means we only have 7 copy abilities to work with, which really isn't much. To dispatch your current copy ability, you press the C up button, or up on the right analog stick for a modern controller, which will cause Kirby to spit out the ability and hold it above his head, which allows you to throw it as a projectile, and if that ability just happens to collide with another enemy that also can give a copy ability, they fuse. This is the main gameplay gimmick of Kirby 64, the ability to fuse 2 copy abilities together to make something entirely new. Think of it like how the animal friends in the previous games changed how the copy ability functioned, but here you have much more agency over it. This is such a cool concept that opens so much room for experimentation that it makes the limited base abilities feel justified. You could fuse two of the same ability for a more powerful version of it, or create something entirely new like Ice Bomb for a Snowman Bomb attack. How about Burn Bomb to turn Kirby into a firework? With Ice Shock, Kirby can become a refrigerator that can spawn endless amounts of healing items to consume. Stone and Needle results in a drill, Needle Cutter results in fucking nightmare fuel apparently, and with Cutter Shock you get a lawsuit from George Lucas. I will say though that sometimes trying to fuse the abilities together can feel a little clunky. Like, I don't mind having to chuck the ability at an enemy in order to fuse them. I mind when the enemy jumps over it or something in the environment clips it instead. It makes me wish that there was some other way to safely fuse abilities that doesn't leave you completely naked if you fuck up. Of course, there's more to do than to just play with the fused copy abilities. In every level, there are 3 crystal shards, and the way you get them can range from them just being tucked away so you have to go searching for them, needing a specific combination of copy ability to which they most of the time give you what you need in the level, or by defeating mini-bosses. Finding the crystal shards is how you're going to get the most out of this game, because otherwise, Kirby 64 is very short in comparison to Dreamland 3. There are less stages in total, and the stages themselves rarely run over 5 minutes in length. This does mean levels don't overstay their welcome, and I do appreciate that, especially for the few instances where backtracking is required for a certain copy ability, so it doesn't sting as bad. As you progress through the stages in Popstar, we'll encounter various characters who get possessed by dark matter, with us having to clobber their shit in. Waddle Dee gets transformed into a Waddle Doo, which is kind of terrifying to think about, that his little 2 beady eyes get transformed into one giant grotesque one. Adeline, who I think is supposed to be Addo from Dreamland 3, gets possessed, and her fight is just a retread of her fight from that game. Finally, we break in the castle Dedede and try to get him to join us until he's possessed by dark matter, and his fight is just the same as it was back in Dreamland 3. I like how he refuses to join the main cast at first, like, "I need a monster to claw with that there Kirby!" Then Waddle Dee tells him that he can be a playable character, and that's enough for Dedede to go with them. Oh yes, you can actually play as the Giant Penguin King, albeit only for certain level sections. He's pretty fun to play as at least. He can't fly, but you can charge up his hammer swing for a devastating attack. These sections aren't very long, as they're just the means to shake up the normal gameplay every now and then. Dedede isn't the only one who gets in on the action, as Adeline can appear in certain stages to provide hints with a specific crystal shard, or just straight up give you healing items or a 1-up even. Waddle Dee can appear for the boat ride / minecart sections, where you pretty much just need to time your button presses so you don't eat shit. This game has a total of 6 worlds, and I honestly thought that they were going for a music motif with the names at first, since the first 2 worlds are called Popstar and Rockstar, but then you get Aquastar, Neostar, Shiverstar, and Ripplestar, so that shot that idea in the ass. Each world, of course, gives their respective levels their themes. Popstar is your grassy greens area, Rockstar is a desert planet a la Tatooine. That is the second time I have mentioned Star Wars in this. Aquastar is your beach / water area. Neostar starts off as a lush jungle before moving to the volcanic underbelly of the planet. Shiverstar is your ice world, but slowly moves into abandoned factories and stuff as if the original inhabitants of the planet died off, which explains why the place looks like Earth, except let's be honest, we're not freezing this place. We're melting it. Finally is Ripplestar, which is the dark world of the game, which leads to the final boss. At the end of every level is a jumping minigame where you have to try and land on an item to help you moving forward. This can range from the point stars to food, a 1-up, or these enemy cards, which are an entirely superfluous collectible. They can be viewed on the file select screen, and they just show you the various enemies from the game. There's a lot of these to collect, but it's not necessary for completion, so it's not like you should go out of your way to get these. In terms of the actual levels themselves, they're still pretty simple when compared to most other platformers from the era, with no over-the-top challenges or anything like that. Although I swear this game has a freakish hard-on for instant kill crushers. I can count on my hand the amount of times I've gotten crushed to death in a Kirby game that I've played for this channel, and 100% of them belong to this one game. It caught me off guard pretty hard, but I ain't gonna sit here and say something bad level design. Kirby 64, as I stated earlier, is a more difficult Kirby game. It just so happens that that gets reflected in the level obstacles. Outside of that, nothing ever gets overbearing. You can still just sit down for a couple hours and enjoy this game like any other Kirby game, and it helps that this game's aesthetic just works so well on the N64. The colors in the game just pop, and as a result, it is so visually appealing. Top it off with the fact that the game came out in the final years of the N64's life, Kirby 64 is able to take advantage of the hardware to present one of the best looking games on the system. I think this also extends to the soundtrack because I think out of all of the 3 games in the Dark Matter trilogy, Kirby 64 has some of the best vibes to just, well, vibe to. The main Grasslands theme of the game I think is up there with something like Green Greens from Dreamland 1. The game even knows how to make some more mellow and ambient themes, like the Ruins theme, which is just something you just lay down to and just vibe. Not to mention the main boss theme, which I think has to be one of my favorite boss themes in the entire Kirby franchise, so much so that it was brought back years later for Kirby's Epic Yarn as the final boss theme for that game. Before we get into the bosses, let's tackle the minigames as we got 3 in total to go over, and they're all 4-player minigames, thanks to the N64 having 4 controller ports. You can of course just battle against the CPUs if you don't have any friends to play with. Alone on a Friday night? God, you're pathetic. 100-yard hop sees you racing to the finish by hopping and avoiding obstacles that will slow you down. You can either do a large hop or a small hop, and in the heat of the moment, this actually gets really fun, especially on higher difficulties while you're trying to avoid the obstacles. Bumper Crop Bump requires you to catch as much fruit as possible, while also bumping into other players or just straight up swapping places with them to screw them out of catching some fruit. Finally is Checkerboard Chase, which is easily the best of the bunch. You send out this shockwave that causes the tiles to fall down, and you want to catch your opponents in them so that they lose a life, with everyone having 5 in total, and once the match goes on long enough, the arena starts to shrink down, making it just a little bit more tense. Now let's go over the bosses, starting with the one and only Wispy Woods. You have to kill his children for the first phase, with the second phase needing you to attack his roots when he launches them out of the ground in an attempt to hurt Kirby. Pix, if you ask me, is one of the more challenging fights in the game, as you have to destroy the 3 colored diamonds that make it up. But first, you gotta survive the tower climb segment, and then you can start damaging it while avoiding its various methods of attack. Acro returns from Dreamland 3, and his first phase is the same as his second phase from that game, and once you beat him, he starts chasing Kirby upwards and can now fire missiles out of his mouth. Magman is a lava monster in the core of Neostar that will attack us from the background until phase 2 where this fucker decides to get up close and personal. Killing him at least damns Neostar to a core death, so there's that at least. HR-H here, or as I like to call it, Metal Gear Ray will attempt to kill Kirby with its laser beam attack as well as use its giant-ass arms like swords. Phase 2 sees it transform into a battle tank that will relentlessly chase us down while firing missiles out at us and trying to pinch us with its lobster claws. Finally, we come face to face with Miracle Matter. It's completely invulnerable to any attack we throw at it, and will transform into the 7 copy abilities from the game, with us having to attack it with those specific abilities. So Cutter Matter can only be hurt by Cutter, Ice can only be hurt by Ice, you get the idea. It can be tough, but after a bit, Miracle Matter is destroyed and the day is saved. If you fail to retrieve all of the crystal shards, then we get the bad ending where Dark Matter just fucks off and our heroes return to Popstar. But just as the camera starts to fade, we get a menacing look from the Fairy Queen, and the credits will display without any color. If you did get all of the crystal shards, then the fully reformed crystal fires a laser beam at the Fairy Queen's ass, which gave me a good chuckle when I first saw it, but it expels dark matter from her and causes it and the rest of dark matter to fly off into space to form the Dark Star. Kirby then whips out his cell phone to call the Warp Star. God, that cell service is to be incredible. Who's Kirby's carrier? With the Warp Star, the gang heads into the Dark Star for the true final battle. Dark Star only has 1 level, and it's just a short romp with barely any enemies in it, and at the end, DDD launches us to confront the true mastermind of Dark Matter. Zero 2, the seemingly reborn form of Zero from Dreamland 3, who now looks more like a biblically accurate angel, but this ain't no holy creature. Zero 2 will fire attacks from its eyeball, with Kirby and Ribbon having to use the crystal needle gun to pierce the thing's eye. Once enough hits have been dealt to the eye, we have to shoot the band-aid on the top of its head, which I think is where its first eyeball got ripped out, and after that, we can fly underneath the monster and hit its cactus penis. Yeah, I got no clue what the hell this thing is supposed to be, but this will take you multiple goes before you completely deplete the thing's health. Not to mention, if you try to quit out, then the game tells you to tough it out, which is actually really funny. After enough hits to the dick, 02 explodes, and with it the rest of dark matter, ending the Dark Menace once and for all. With the days saved, we get the award ceremony scene from A New Hope. God, someone must have really liked Star Wars. Well, Phantom Menace did come out a year before this game. I guess that explains the double lightsaber Kirby can use. Kirby even gets a kiss on the cheek from Ribbon, which makes him blush and nearly die falling down the steps, but with the credits now in proper color, we can end our time with Kirby 64. I wasn't all too sure what I would think of Kirby 64 at first. It felt like it took some steps back with the lack of animal buddies, as well as the copy abilities reverting to how they were prior to Superstar. But what Kirby 64 introduces more than makes up for it. The ability to combine copy abilities is so much fun, just from the possibilities it opens up alone. The levels are fun to play in, the bosses never get too grueling, and the crystal shards themselves are never too taxing to find. I think when you put all of that together in the pot, Kirby 64 turns out to be one of the best games in the series. It's not on the same level as, say, Superstar, but I would say it's better than Adventure and the Dreamland trilogy. Play Kirby 64 if you haven't already. It's a good romp that is sure to keep you smiling all the way through, just except for the parts where it tries to disturb you. Well, we can now end our current revisit to the Kirby series, but when we do return to the pink puffball, we'll tackle Kirby's handheld life on the GBA and the DS, as well as Kirby Air Ride just for good measure. Subscribe to the channel if that sounds fun to you, and leave a like and a comment should you choose. And with all of that said, have a great day or night. Peace! CeeCee, get your fucking costume on.
Yeah, I wanna get to the party before all the crackers are gone.
Oh, will you two just wait a bit?
No, we were supposed to leave 3 hours ago, and you've been holding us up.
Oh, for God's sakes. Well, why do you two even want to go in the first place?
Wanna meet some girls? Get out there.
I mean, I was kinda hoping someone would take me to the closet and...
Okay, and I don't want to go. Did you two ever think about that? You two don't have to take me everywhere. I swear, sometimes it feels like you guys just allow your worlds to revolve around me, and I hate that! You two can just grow a pair, act like adults, and go do stuff without my involvement! What?